My last name is a stage name. It is taken from this teacher of mine. His name was Lauren Salter. I didn't like my real name, my legal name, so I wanted something to perform under. And he had been like a surrogate father to me. I ended up coming up with Lauren's son. I had noticed that I was having trouble swallowing. My voice would go all raspy. I would drool. It was weird. Like I'd just be sitting watching TV and all of a sudden, oh, and I'm like, I thought I'd had a stroke. My right tonsil had swollen almost to the center of my throat. I went to see an ENT who thought it was just an abscess, and so he stabbed it. Super painful. I had figured out by the time I was seeing the ENT that what was happening. I was pretty sure this was at least a tumor. And I said, do you know of an engineer, producer, somebody over here in Europe that I could give these to and see if there's anything worth salvaging? He's 73. He goes, I guess you don't realize that my entire career has been as a music producer and album producer. I'm like, well, I didn't. Now I'm scrounging through boxes looking to see if I have anything else I can release as singles or anything like that.
Are you a music artist trying to find a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible? Then check out DistroKid. DistroKid is a super user-friendly and super easy-to-use service that will make your music available in stores like Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon Music, YouTube, Snapchat, everything you could imagine. It's available. People will even be able to add your songs into their Instagram stories. DistroKid helps you with the distribution, monetization, and promotion of all of your music. Use the link in the description of this video for 7% off any DistroKid package you want. Pick from musician packages designed to help artists get their own music out there, or even get a label package where you can manage up to 100 artists from one profile. So that's more for like managers, labels, and you can also get the musician package that I mentioned earlier, which is more for artists, producers, things like that. And super easy, and you can get 7% off any package right now with the link in the description of this video. So once again, if you're looking for a way to get your music on as many streaming platforms as possible, I'm talking any platform you can think of, get DistroKid and get 7% off right now with the link in the description. Back to the program.
My guest today is San Francisco's cherished crooner. He recently unveiled his long-awaited album, Standard Time, live in New York, and his captivating tenor and love for the Great American Songbook have earned him acclaim in the US and Europe. Despite overcoming HPV-positive tonsil cancer in 2021, which silenced his singing voice, this artist is back with a bang. Please welcome Russ Lorenson to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm great. Thank you so much for coming on today. I mean, as people just heard, we have a lot to talk about. I think that's probably the longest intro I've given a guest on here. So
wow.
Yeah. So let's
we can thank my publicist for that for the very long intro.
Yeah. Well, I just want to get right into it. The first question
Sure.
I usually ask people is just what was your first experience with music like, or what made you get an interest in wanting to pursue music?
Yeah. Well, I've been performing since I was about 7. Back then, I won one of the cherished elf roles in the Elves and the Shoemaker. It was like there was only 2 elves and then all these other people in the cast. So I got one of the 2 elf roles, and I was hooked being on stage. And so I sang mostly, did choirs and that sort of thing. And then junior high, high school transitioned into doing musical theater, and did that for many, many years as an adult, and toured the U.S. and that sort of thing, doing a lot of musical theater. And in 2005, I made the transition sort of out of theater into more nightclub performing. I still did a little bit of musical theater up until about 2008, but beyond that, did the club stuff. And what got me into it, I'll be honest, is I'm going to make a pitch for music in the public schools. Like if it wasn't for music in the schools, I wouldn't have a career. I wouldn't be here. That's where my musical background came from. So I was really fortunate to have some great music teachers throughout my school career. So I had a guy in junior high who, and my last name is a stage name. So it is taken from this teacher of mine, whose name was Loren Salter. He's now 82 years old, a dear friend of mine. And when I turned 18, I didn't like my real name, my legal name, so I wanted something to perform under. And he had been like a surrogate father to me. So I ended up coming up with Lauren's son, which is where the name came from. And so he got me into performing, really into musical theater, choral singing, that sort of thing. And then when I got into high school, I went into a more classical bent with another teacher of mine who is also still around in his 90s, Bob Keller. And we were a very classical oriented group, madrigals and Renaissance music and that sort of thing, state champions in California. And between those two experiences, one more popular entertainment, if you will, and one more grounded in technique and classical literature, merging those two together really gave me a well-rounded love for music in my life and what I could do. And then probably the third influence in that was getting together with a man who's been my musical director for almost 20 years now, Kelly Park, who is taught at Berklee College of Music, and he taught big band arranging. And so as I was moving away from a theater tradition more into being a crooner or a jazz singer, it was fortunate that I connected with him, and that's been sort of the last like big influence on me in terms of direct mentors and teachers in my life.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
long
great.
answer to a very short question. I apologize.
But no, it's a great answer though. And like going back to your point about like music in public schools, I think it's definitely important. I mean, I think I might have mentioned this story on here, but if not, then I'll tell it now. Like on top of this podcast and stuff, I'm very into like music production and releasing music, and that all started from a class in my public school in high school.
Yes.
I was like looking for electives to take, and there was one called digital music, and I was like, oh, that sounds cool, let me take it, see what it's about. And it was just the basic fundamentals of like music production. And it was that unlocked like an entire new world for me, and I was like, absolutely, like this is awesome, like I really want to get into this. And so
Yeah.
I definitely think
Thank God
having
for our teachers, man, and our schools, because
yeah,
and
definitely.
it's sadly going away, and it's like it's really important to not only support our schools but support organizations who are doing that kind of work. So, for example, one of those organizations I support is called Exploring the Arts, which was a nonprofit foundation that was formed. It was started by Tony Bennett and his wife to put music into the schools. And their first project was to create this high school in Queens that he named for his best friend, the Frank Sinatra School of the Arts. But they've grown from that to schools all through the New York tri-state area, as well as Los Angeles, and helping young people get into music. The other organization that I work with most recently, with my new album release, we did a benefit for the American Songbook Association, which is based also in New York. And they have a sort of they're about protecting the Great American Songbook and promoting the new songbook, songs that are still being written today. But their outreach programs into the public schools, as well as senior homes, assisted living facilities, and that sort of thing. So they hit both ends of the spectrum in terms of age. But both of these organizations do such important work to support the schools. Because my fear is that, someday there's not going to be any arts in the school. It's all going to be, and nothing wrong with STEM education, but we got to have some arts in there somewhere. And,
Yeah, definitely. And so you mentioned like towards the start of your career, like getting into it with musical theater and then transitioning from that into like singing, songwriting, and just like performing music.
Yeah.
What do you sort of find is more passionate for you, or what do you enjoy doing more?
What I liked about musical theater was being with a cast. Like I like working with other people and learning from them and sort of experiencing that cooperative world that you have in the theater. Um, what I found though is like, there's a very finite period, right? You're going to go in, you're going to do a show, and whether you're on Broadway and doing it for a year, or you're doing more local kinds of regional theater, only doing it for 8 to 12 weeks or a tour, um, there's a finite period of time, and then you move on to the next project, and it doesn't really evolve. What's really important in that world is consistency of performance. You want to deliver almost exactly the same performance. You grow into the role, but you kind of lock it in because audiences come to expect to see. If they come back, they want to see a similar performance, or they tell people about it, and so you don't have a lot of room to change things or improvise. What I liked about moving into solo work and especially jazz oriented stuff, I still get the camaraderie. Like I work with a band. I have a musical director. Like I said, we've been together almost 2 decades, and we've had a roving cast of other musicians who come in on bass or drums or whatever. Some have they come and go. You know, they have other projects, and so they're not always available. But he and I have been consistent together, so it's kind of fun to work with that ensemble that changes, but we decide what the material is. And on any given night, we can decide, I don't want to do that song, or let's throw this one in, or hey, let's do it in a completely different way. And everybody's sort of up for it, especially in the jazz world. Yeah, well, all right, we'll go with it. I find what's really interesting is when I have guests in my shows, which I used to do a lot when I was doing my holiday show in San Francisco. I would bring in guest artists, and a lot of people that I knew were musical theater performers, and they get so nervous because you don't rehearse a lot. Like there's a loose chart that's written, it's just jazz charts, right? So they get written, they get handed out to the band. There's no like sheet music, there's no like direction. So they come in and like, yeah, okay, we'll run it 2 or 3 times, and then everybody's fine. Like, okay, you ran it. And they're like, well, no, we need to rehearse for like 8 hours, and we have to do this multiple times. And you're like, no, that's not how we do it in this world. The idea
Yeah.
is to be fresh and spontaneous. So you get enough that everybody knows what the guardrails on the highway are. But then it's up to you to drive down the highway and not, try not to crash into each other.
Yeah,
So it
because
lends a real spark. So I like that. I like them both. But I really tend to like the more concert version, because I'm a control freak, and I have a lot more control of what's happening than I am when I'm in a cast.
yeah, well, I get that aspect of it, and I think, like you mentioned, improvisation is such a big part of jazz that like no two performances or no two songs are gonna be like the exact same.
Right,
Even if,
right.
like fans come to multiple shows on a tour, artists typically do something different like for each show. And
Yeah.
so I think it's just cool to have something fresh every now and then, rather than, like you said, it being rehearsed and having consistently the same thing every day.
It's funny
Maybe,
because you hear a lot, especially from folks who are very popular. So if you're talking about, let's say the Rolling Stones, or some big band that's been around for a long time, or Ed Sheeran even, or Barry Manilow. Doesn't matter who the artist is, but someone who's had a long career, especially one that's had a lot of recordings. I've heard many interviews where they say it's hard because if they don't feel like doing I write the songs, the audience loses their minds. Like, no, you have to do that. We want to hear the stuff we heard, and we want it to sound like the record. And people get a little torqued when you don't do it like that. But I find it in the jazz world, you don't get that so much. They're like, oh, listen, all right, do it a different way. And they're open to it, and they'll tell you they didn't like it. But they seem to be a little bit more open to improvisation and change, and doing it in a different way, or doing a whole different repertoire if you want, where they're not so insistent on your hits. I mean, I have one hit, if you will, that I recorded almost 20 years ago, called Christmas in San Francisco. It comes out this time every year. It's played by especially one big radio station in San Francisco. It's a top 40 station. They're the number, I think they're the number 4 AC station in the US. Um, and they switched to an all Christmas format around Thanksgiving. And then they do that until like New Year's. And because this song is about San Francisco, they've been playing it since I recorded it in 2006. And so whenever I do a holiday show, especially in the Bay Area, if I don't sing that song, people get that's really what they want to hear. And
Yeah.
God bless them, it's my number one hit. If you look at Spotify, it's oh God, 20 times what the nearest song is. Like people play it.
Yeah.
I've just recently gotten onto TikTok. Um, the guy that runs my label said, don't worry about being on TikTok. No one who's 12 listens to your music anyway. Um, but I recently got on there and people have made hundreds of videos using this Christmas in San Francisco song. It just kind of blows me away that other people are taking my music and then doing something else with it, which is really fun.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of it. That's what I'm known as. I'm the Christmas guy. Yeah, you're right. So I'm going
Yeah.
off on a
And
tangent, but
well, I
having
want to,
that freedom to do that sort of thing in a jazz world is something I really, really treasure.
yeah. And I want to, get into that song that you just mentioned, Christmas in San Francisco. What was like recording that, or when you first came up with that? Just anything you can tell us about the story behind the song.
Yeah, yeah. The song, it's interesting. The song was written by a guy named Tony Romano, who was a guitarist for Tony Bennett and Vic Damone. And he wrote this song thinking that Tony Bennett should record it. He wrote it really for Tony. He wanted Tony to record it as a bookend to I Left My Heart in San Francisco. He thought this would be like the Christmas version of that song. And Tony liked it, listened to it. But at the end of the day, Columbia Records, where Tony was under contract at the time, said no. It'll dilute the value of I Left My Heart in San Francisco. So we don't want to have another San Francisco song on there. So Tony Romano, being the song plugger that he was, went to his other guy, Vic Damone, and said, "Hey, what do you think of this song?" Vic loved it. Vic recorded it, put it out. It became a Christmas hit for Vic Damone. And that's where it sat for years. I think I think it's only Vic and I that have ever recorded this song. I say Vic like I know him. Mr. Damone and I are the only ones who have ever recorded this song. And I first encountered it when I moved to San Francisco in 1997. I had grown up in San Diego, had lived there almost all of my life. And then I moved to the Bay Area around Christmas time. And I listened to this station that plays my song, and they were playing Vic's version of it. And I heard this song and I'm like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful song. I was feeling lonely. My friends were all, it was my first Christmas there and I didn't know anybody really. And I heard this gorgeous song on the radio and I went, oh, it just encapsulated what I thought was great about Christmas in San Francisco. And I swore that if I ever did anything, any kind of recording, I would record that. So cut to 2005, and I was doing my first nightclub show was called A Little Traveling Music, which is also the name of my first album. And that show was sort of telling my story. I had a day job at the time where I traveled the world. Like I was constantly on the road. And so it was sort of let me sing songs about places like Paris and London and, blah, blah, blah. And we used to, at the end of the show, I would sing a song called I'm Always Drunk in San Francisco, which is a great tune. And then we were doing it and it got to be like December time. And I thought, oh, wait, we got to swap that out and put in the other one. So I had Kelly write a chart based on the original recording, and we stuck that in the show. And then when we went to record the album of this show, I decided to put Christmas in San Francisco in instead of I'm Always Drunk. And it took off, and hundreds of thousands of streams later, it's still a big hit. And then that same year, 6 months later, we put out a full Christmas album, and I put it on that one as well. It's the same recording. We
Yeah.
just put it on both albums, put it on as a bonus track. And people just love the song, but that's how I came to it. And so I love the song so much. And sorry that I can't sing anymore because I would love to redo it. We're talking about doing a 20th anniversary re-release of those two albums that we did like in 2026, so 2 years from now. And I'm hoping that we can do at least a little remastering on it because it was, that those first two albums were recorded in my music director's brother's converted garage.
Yeah.
He set up all his, he had a recording studio, closed it down, and then just had a little mini one in his garage. And so, like I remember there was an isolation booth, very small, and then a place for him to sit, and it was big enough for me and his two pit bulls who sat at my feet while I recorded the album. So in the middle of, I don't know, it was middle of summer or something when we recorded that thing, and I'm singing Christmas in San Francisco. It was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned like no longer sing. You're coming out with new releases, but they're, older versions, live performances from the
Yeah.
past. When you were first diagnosed with tonsil cancer, what was that moment like for you, or what was that time of your life like?
Yeah, it was strange. I moved to Spain in 2019. I shouldn't say I moved here. We have a place here, and since the pandemic, especially, we've spent more and more time here, so it's almost full time now. Um, and we were here, and I had noticed that I was having trouble swallowing. I was having trouble. My voice would go all raspy. I would drool. It was weird. Like I'd just be sitting watching TV, and all of a sudden, oh, and I'm like, I thought I'd had a stroke, to be honest. That's what I thought had happened. Like I was just, what's going on? And then I was on a Zoom call for my day job, on the camera while you're waiting for someone to come on. You're like checking your hair and doing all this kind of stuff. And I happened to look, and I could see that my right tonsil had swollen almost to the center of my throat. Like it was
Oh, wow.
huge. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I'm like freaking out. So I went to at the time we were having to go back and forth between Spain and Croatia because we didn't have a proper visa for Spain. Long story. But so we had an apartment in Croatia and an apartment here in Spain. And we got to Croatia. I went to see an ENT who thought it was just an abscess. And so he stabbed it, which was super painful, but expecting it would just be an abscess and you get rid, and it wasn't. So then we got referred to a surgeon, and I had surgery in Croatia. And I had figured out by the time I was seeing the ENT what was happening. I was pretty sure this was at least a tumor. I didn't know if it was going to be benign or malignant or whatever, but we had the surgery, and then I came back to Spain, and I'm really fortunate. Spain has amazing healthcare, and we have a world-class cancer center literally 10 minutes from our house. So I came back here and had all my radiation and chemo and all that. And one of the downsides of it, cancer is a gift that keeps on giving, is that the radiation messed up my cords. So were I still in the States and really still making a living as a touring artist, then I would probably have to go see a therapist and see if I could get some of it back. But I hadn't really been doing that since we moved over here. And so, but for the most part, I can't sustain a note. Like if I try to hold a note, it cuts out. It sounds like a skipping record or something.
Yeah.
And if I talk too long, I start to get raspy and that kind of thing. So it was tough that I couldn't do it anymore. But at the time, I wasn't worried about it because I was kind of semi-retiring as a performer. Well, back in 2007 and 8, I was touring after my traveling show that I was talking about. I started touring this show called Standard Time, and the gist of that show was the Great American Songbook didn't stop being written in 1959, and I can prove it. I've got all these great songs that have been written in the last 20 years that people should hear. And so I did this show. We toured it for about a year. And the last two performances of that show, we taped at the Metropolitan Room in New York, with the thought that we'd be doing a live album. We just put it out as a live recording the following year. Life happens. The project got shelved at the time, and off we went and continued doing I did a Bobby Darin show and a Tony Bennett show and lots of other things. And I can obviously continue with my holiday show. But these original recordings have been sitting in a box, first in San Francisco, and now we brought them with us to Spain, and they were sitting here. And at the beginning of 2023, I had some time on my hands. I had a couple of months where I was going to be working. And so I thought, if I was ever going to do it, it's been on my to-do list for all these years. I'd never even listened to them. I had no idea what was on them. And when I first played them back, there were songs I didn't even remember singing. Like, I'm listening to that going, I mean, now I do, but like having repeated.
You needed the reminder.
Yeah, I just went, wow, I forgot about that. All right, this one. And I was lucky. We recorded the two performances as well as videotaped them. So we have the full 2 evenings. And I sent them to a friend of mine who runs a radio station, an internet radio station called the Great American Songbook Radio Station. We've been friends for years. And he plays my holiday stuff every year. And I said, do you know of an engineer, producer, somebody over here in Europe that I could give these to and see if there's anything worth salvaging? And he said, he's 73. He goes, I guess you don't realize that my entire career has been as a music producer and album producer. I'm like, well, I didn't. I just know him as running the radio station. So he said, send them to me and I'll take a listen. So I did. He listened to them and came back and said, I want to do this as a project. Oh, and I'm not going to charge you for it because you're my friend and I think this is really great material and it fits with what the radio station's about and all that. So we spent a couple of months via Zoom listening every week. We met weekly and we'd listen to 2 or 3 songs, both performances, to figure out which one was good and which we liked better and all that sort of thing. And we mixed and mastered and put this album out. We actually have 2 versions of it. One is the full version where there's a lot more talking on it. So if you listen to it from beginning to end, you feel like you're at the show. You actually hear what I'm saying in between the songs and that sort of thing. And then we have a radio edit version, which is a lot of that stripped out so that it's more Spotify friendly or radio station friendly, that kind of stuff, where they don't want to hear all me chattering. So yeah, I miss it, and I'm, especially with having done this album, I really miss the work of singing, right? Of working with other artists, my musical director, that sort of thing. And we did all of that when we just had the album release event in Manhattan at the beginning of December. I couldn't sing, so I just emceed the night, and we brought in other guest artists who sang the material from the album, which, not unintentionally, proved the point that these are great songs and any artist can pick them up and put their own spin on it. But it was tough, I'll tell you. I got a little misty in the rehearsal room when we were bringing these artists in and the band is playing. I'm like, oh my God, I just wanted to get up and sing this stuff that I can't anymore, you know. But I'm glad it's out there. Now I'm scrounging through boxes looking to see if I have anything else I can release as singles or anything like that, because I had such a good time doing it, and I do miss it, to be honest.
Hey, if you're like me and you're interested in the YouTube or creator space, you should check out The Published Press. The Published Press is a completely free newsletter founded by YouTubers Colin and Samir. They host their own podcast talking to some of YouTube's largest creators. They've edited some of the best content I've seen on YouTube, and now they're sharing their knowledge about the YouTube space with you for free. The Published Press comes out 3 times a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, with everything going on with your favorite creators and platforms. And like I said, it's completely free. Just enter your email address to receive the Published Press whenever it comes out, and that's it. So what are you waiting for? click the link in the description below, sign up to the Publish Press, and get all the info you need on the industry.
You sort of talked about it there, but like I was wondering after Standard Time Live in New York, if you have any plans of like other live performances or old recordings that you want to release.
I think I have a couple. Like there are like songs that we did as tests when I was when we did. I'm trying to remember. It must have been the traveling show. I was at the time we were recording the traveling album. I was already working on my Tony Bennett show, and
Yeah.
so since we had, I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 songs that we had charts for and that we had rehearsed, and we decided since we were in the studio and had some time, let's just record them and see if we ever do anything with them. And I know I have those recordings. We didn't mix or master them. They're just the raw recordings, so they could probably be dusted off. So there's probably a few. I don't know if I have a whole album out there, but there's a few singles that might appear. Um, and beyond that, for this coming year, I'm really focused on. I'm following the Julie Andrews school of what happens when you can't sing anymore, and I've been working on a children's book that we will be out in for Christmas next year, based on a track that I recorded, a Christmas track that I recorded on my last Christmas album. So
Awesome. Well, it's great that you're taking sort of your music career, things that you've done, and trying to put it into like other forms, like a children's book and things like that. And
yeah.
you mentioned it coming out for Christmas next year. You have a very festive, backdrop here. You have 2 Christmas albums released. Like, what is it with you and the Christmas spirit? Just like loving this time of year.
If I had a dime for everybody who said that to me, what is it with you at Christmas? Um, I don't know. Like I grew up. To me, Christmas was a super magical time. I don't know. I don't know. I have a very hazy, romantic, vision of it in my head.
Yeah.
To be honest, it wasn't a pleasant time in my family's household growing up. My parents fought like cat and dog, and it seemed that their biggest fight of the year every year was on Christmas Eve. Like, like that was the knockdown, drag out. One year a wine glass was thrown and like it hit my dad in the face. Anyway, it was not. If you looked at it objectively, I don't know why I love it so much, but I think I developed this sort of as a defense mechanism. Like I want it to be beautiful, and this is what it should be, and so I have this real aspirational view of it. And as an adult, my partner and I have gone crazy. Luckily, he loves it as much as I do, and so we love to decorate. My Christmas shows were always my favorite that I did. I wanted to be, if I was going to come back in another life, I'd come back as Andy Williams and have the Andy Williams Christmas special every year. Um, uh, Rod Stewart has an amazing Christmas special that for some reason isn't out. Like I have a DVD or a digital recording of it, and I watch it every year. It's one of the best Christmas specials there is. It's not cheesy, like there aren't, skits
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. It's just him and music with a beautiful orchestra and a beautiful location. Um, and it's that kind of thing that I want. There's something about bringing that joy to people because frankly Christmas isn't always a pleasant time for people, and it certainly isn't what the Hallmark Channel puts out every year with their 3,000 movies. Life isn't like that, but we want it to be that, or there wouldn't be an appetite for it. And so I'm really tickled to put these albums out as keepsakes. That's what they were for me when I was a kid. I mean, these would come out, they were precious, they were always stored away with the Christmas stuff, and you they would come the beginning of December, and there's Johnny Mathis and there's Andy Williams and Perry Como and all this kind of stuff. And so when I recorded, that's really what I wanted to do, is have something that would fit in that collection without standing out. I mean, God love her, but Mariah Carey doesn't fit in that playlist, right? That's just
Yeah.
not her music, and it's not their music. And what I do is more the old time stuff because I think it has that sort of romantic, nostalgic view of Christmas that I have.
Yeah, that's great. And so going back, I mean, just to your performing career in general, when you were still playing live, all these things, do you have any specific live show? Maybe it is standard time, but live show that you've played that's your favorite or that really sticks in your mind?
You know, wow, I could probably list on one hand the shows because as most performers, we all only remember the really bad stuff about us. You know, there's
Yeah.
always that critic. So I can remember the handful of shows that were just dismal. But in terms of my favorite shows, I honestly, uh, hmm, I was going to say all my Christmas songs. I think though my favorite show that I ever did um, was the first time we did the Bobby Darin show. Um, because I was telling a story that most people didn't know. People think of Bobby Darin and they think, oh, Mac the Knife or Splish Splash, or they just know a couple of things. And what I found with him was a really inspirational story. He everything that Bobby accomplished in his life, he did early. He died at 37. And so if you look at this man's catalog of music, it's pretty amazing that he got all of this done. And he had most of his big hits by the time he was 23 or 24. Like, and the reason behind that, and it's sort of now I feel like I mirror it with my own medical issues, is he had rheumatic fever 5 or 6 times by the time he was 8 years old. And
Oh,
so it
wow.
really damaged his heart badly. And when he was, oh, I don't know, 12 or 13, he overheard the family doctor tell his mother that Bobby would be lucky to live past the age of 16. And so Bobby set out to like chew life as hard as he could, knowing that every day past his 16th birthday was a gift. And so you think about this man he had top hits in rock and roll, in what we now call traditional pop, which is what I do, country, folk. He was nominated for a Golden Globe as an actor. He did a bunch of movies, had his own television show. Like he did all of this stuff, um, and then died at 37. And used to go off stage because he was having so many difficulties. He would literally, in between songs, he would make it part of the thing, and he would go off. But they had oxygen for him off stage, and he'd take a hit of oxygen and come back on like nothing's wrong, and he would do this big show. And I just found that really inspirational. So when we did the show, what was thrilling for me was to tell that story, but also to get to do a little bit of rock and roll, some traditional pop, some big band, some folk, some country. Like that was a really
You,
fun show
yeah,
to try all of that on, in front of an audience.
you embraced all the genres that were included in that.
Yeah, yeah. And then when you hear them all in one night, it's kind of amazing. And I mean, it was fun because somebody did come up to me after the show and say, because I sort of apologized as we went into the country section. I'm like, if you don't like country music, it'll be over in 3 songs. If you do like country, I'm sorry, there's only 3 songs. And someone came up after and said, "Oh my God, you should do an entire country show," because I do love country music so much. But a lot of that had to, the success of that show had to do with the particular band that we had at the time, the venue that we were in. So that one particular performance stands out. But I will tell you that all of the holiday shows that we did, I did my Christmas in San Francisco show for 10 years, and it got bigger every year. We did it, the first year was in a little club with about 40 people. And by the end, we had a 16-piece big band and like, blew it all out because it coincided with the release of the album, which was a big band album. So the last couple of years were really fun because they just got bigger. And every year I would invite 3 guest artists to come in and do duets with them. And, it was always like I'd recreate a Stephen Edie duet or this or that. And so those were really fun. So overall, that would be the show that I love. But that one Bobby Darin show like sticks out still. It's the one I'll go to my grave and go, I did a good job. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
it makes me mad. We videotaped it. I hired a professional videographer to, we were going to put it out. And he ran the sound from the board at the club. And I don't know what happened, but the sound is terrible on it. So like the video is beautiful, but the sound is awful. So like that's one that I would love. Oh God, I wish I had recorded that somehow. And I don't have any recordings of the Bobby Darin stuff that I'm aware of. Something to make pop up
Might
out of
show up
somebody's
in one of
head.
these
Yeah, you
boxes
never
that you
know.
have.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
know I don't have any, and I've hunted for it. But I would love to have recorded some of that stuff. And even Tony Bennett, we didn't really record much of the Tony Bennett material, which I mean I toured that show for 10 years, and it just got to be like it was routine. So we never bothered to go, oh, we should record this. And then, after
Yeah.
we did it for 10 years, we were all kind of like, oh well, we missed that opportunity. So I have some videotape of that. I have full show videotape of that, but the sound quality I don't think is good enough to actually release as an album or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you have, I mean, live shows, obviously you have so much experience with that, it's hard to choose just one that's your favorite. Do you have a favorite song that you've performed that's your favorite, or one that you just loved performing?
Gosh, that's like asking which is your favorite child. You know, no, I can't. I wish I could say I had a favorite song. I mean, my very favorite song, I've never sung, never performed. It's one of those, I love the song so much that I never wanted to try it and screw it up.
Yeah.
Um, and I love so many versions of it, but I never, which is called Skylark by Hoagie Carmichael and Johnny Mercer. Fantastic song. Um, you know, I have to say, coming back to these recent recordings, the new album, and listening to it, there's a song that I co-wrote with my musical director um, that actually, according to Spotify, is the most popular song on the new album. I mean, it's twice as many streams as if that's a judge of success. And I really, really like it. And people have commented that they like it because it harkens back to a different time, a different kind of songwriting. Um, so I did like to sing that song quite a bit, partly because of ownership, like, oh, I wrote this.
Yeah.
But partly I think it's a beautiful song, and I really, really like to sing it. And I'm a balladeer at heart, and so anything that I can spend my effort on in a ballad sort of way, I really enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, think back on this conversation. Maybe it is Tony Bennett, maybe it is Bobby, but do you have a few favorite bands or artists that you just love listening to on like a normal daily basis?
Yeah, I do love I mean Bobby is my hero. Like I can't get enough of his story and I love his music. But I'll tell you I don't listen to them so much on a daily basis. I listen to more contemporary folk that I really like. Um, a couple of people have been burning up my playlist for months now. Anthony Strong is an amazing jazz singer out of the UK. Fantastic. He just puts out such quality material. Um, Tony DeSere is another one. Great. He's originally from New York, and now he's since moved to Atlanta, but he's really fantastic. A guy who just guested in our album release show um, is yeah, Spencer Day, who I've known. Ironically, I told this story at the album release. I'm Spencer and I are both from San Francisco,
Yeah.
and the first time I ever met Spencer was at a party in New York at someone's beautiful apartment, quite near the Triad Theater where we did the event. And I got to the party a little late, and when I came in, he and my bass player were running races. This apartment had a really long hallway that ended in a guest bedroom. And they had their shoes off and would run down this hallway that was hardwood floor and then hit it and slide. The whole thing was to who was going to get down there sliding first. That's how I really actually met him. And then I've been a huge fan of his for years. And Spencer, when I asked Spencer to do the album release show, we don't know each other all that well, like, very casually over the years. And so I asked him to do the show. And he is currently living part-time in Mexico because he's working on a project. He's very involved with migrant workers and other cross-border issues. So he's been down there working on a project with Mexican musicians, Mexican and American musicians working together. And so he was in Guatemala. He said, "I'd love to do your show, but you'll have to fly me in from Guatemala." And I said, "If you'll do it, I'll fly you in. I don't care." And so we flew to New York. What I didn't realize is he flew in on the night before the show, did the show, and came to the theater with his suitcase. And as soon as the show was over, went and got back on a plane and went back to Guatemala. Like, I would have done that for me. um, so I was very moved that he made such a huge effort to be a part of it. And he told me partly because he believes in the music and the mission of what we were trying to do with the album and with the show, to point out that these great songs are still being written and performed.
Yeah, it was great that like a more current like pop performer who has done some Christmas stuff, Ed Sheeran. I saw him at like a Christmas, it was the like Jingle Ball concert, I think in 2021. And so he was performing on stage and like, right before his last song, he addresses the crowd and he's like, "So I'm gonna play this last song for you guys, and then I have to go straight from here to the airport to get a flight back to England for Christmas to spend it with my family." And I was like,
Yeah.
that must be insane, like having these travel schedules that are just all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, I was exhausted just to do the album release. We flew over, and I've been to New York twice in a month. We came over the early part of November, a vacation, just a long weekend that had been planned for a long
Yeah.
time before we knew the album release was coming in December. So we were there like the first week of November, and then we went to Scotland with some friends of ours to do some early Christmas celebrating there, and then came home and 3 days later got on a plane and went back to New York again. And I was
Yeah.
wiped. Like I used to be able to do that, but not anymore.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that it's hard at any age, any time of your life. Just to sort of wrap things up here, I have a segment that I've been trying out called Know Your Stuff, where I'm gonna play, short clips of some of the songs you've released and just see, if you can name the song. And
Oh,
feel
wow.
free to, let us know about the background of the song, anything you want to talk about, performing it, anything like that.
Sure. Wow. Okay. This will be fun.
Yeah. All right. Let me know if you can hear this all right.
Like you know. That is Diamond in the Sky from the latest album. That song was, I'm glad you picked that song. I want more people to hear that song. The song was originally written by my musical director, Kelly Park, for his daughter, Christina, who I've known since she was a very little girl, because we were always rehearsing at Kelly's house. And he wrote this song for her when she was, gosh, I don't know, 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old. And she had become at that time obsessed with Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. It's all she ever wanted to hear. And her dad was like so sick of playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. So he wrote a new song that it takes the lyrics from Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star and puts them into this cool, like bossa nova kind of
Yeah.
song. But we recorded it, and what was fun is that when we did the recordings, we told this story, and then I said, "Hey, Christina, years from now, if you hear this, I want you to know your dad loved you and wrote this song for you, and blah 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 blah." And now we're 15 years later, and she's she's a grown woman, and apparently was quite touched now to have that little that little bit of her childhood that is now
Yeah,
permanently recorded.
yeah, I'm sure. And so the next one we have here.
Tingle, tingle.
Kissing by the Mistletoe.
Yeah.
That song, to be honest, I'm going to be really transparent with you, was filler for the album that we did. I shouldn't say filler. I liked the song a lot, and I liked the arrangement that we based ours on was from this band out of Germany, and it was a really cool arrangement with this female singer. Um, that I don't feel like I translated well. I think it came over and sounds a little wonk, 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 wonk. So it's not one of my favorites on that album. And I didn't find out until, what's that with the old joke? Like I was this many days old when I heard that it's an Aretha Franklin Christmas song. Like I had no idea. And Aretha's is the best, I will say. But yeah, that is not my finest moment.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Every artist is gonna have that one song that they're like,
And you had to pick that one.
Yeah. All right, and then the last one that I have for you here today is
It's raining memories.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about earlier that Kelly and I wrote together. That song, it's funny, when we were putting together this Standard Time show, and I wanted this to be about contemporary songs and that sort of thing, Kelly said to me, "Okay, I think you and I should write a song together and make it as part of the show to show that great songs can be written, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Oh my God, okay." I'd written some classical pieces in high school, choral work, but I'd never written a song. And I hit upon there's an old it was a Broadway show that became a movie called New Faces of 1952, and it starred people that you are way too young to remember, but it had Paul Lynde, and it had Alice Ghostley and Robert Clary. Have you ever seen Hogan's Heroes? Robert Clary was Corporal LeBeau, the little French guy on Hogan's Heroes. And it was also the show was most famous because it introduced Eartha Kitt, and that's where she first sang "Santa Baby" was in that show. But the guy who wrote it, Ronnie Graham, the way that the show and the movie were structured, in the middle of the movie is this vignette of 3 songs that are supposed to be purposely awful, like they're just, oh God, terrible songs. And one of them was Robert Clary, this Corporal LeBeau from Hogan's Heroes, singing a song called "It's Raining Memories." And he's got an umbrella. It looked very much like Singing in the Rain. Like he's got an umbrella, but it was terrible. It was like this heart-wrenching French song, and so I saw it and I thought, well, that's a terrible song, but "It's Raining Memories" is a really evocative title. Like, I mean, that speaks to me.
Yeah.
So I set out and wrote new lyrics using that title. And I gave those to Kelly, and Kelly put a melody together. And then he got stuck on what to do with a bridge in the song. And we were together one day and we co-wrote a bridge. I wrote something that would be purposely make me sound good. And we wrote that together, and it's turned out to, like I said, turned out to be super, super popular. And I'm really gratified about that something we did together is resonating with people.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I mean, those are all the questions I had for you today. So thank you so much for coming on, telling us about your career, your love for Christmas, just everything. Whether it's Standard Time, Instagram, anything you want to shout out or promote, feel free to let people know where they can find it.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much I'm on every freaking social platform in the world now. I wasn't a social media person in my personal life, and so it was my publicist dragging me tooth and nail to get on it. So you can find me just about everywhere, Russ Lorenson, or at my website, russlorenson.com. All of them have a link to my link tree, which has everything possible listed. But I would leave with a message besides finding me. Parents to be, get your kids vaccinated against HPV. What I had and what's happened to me is entirely preventable. It's HPV is crazy prevalent. And if you get vaccinated before you're 25, it's good for the rest of your life. It's no good if you get vaccinated after that, apparently. But it's the #1 cause of an epidemic of head and neck cancers. And it usually hits men, as it does between 50 and 60 years old. And it got me at 58. So parents, save your children the heartache. Boys and girls should be vaccinated. There, I've said my public service announcement.
Yeah, well, it's definitely an important message. So thank you for, saying that. Take note if you're listening to this.
Take note, that's right.
Thank you again for coming on. It's been great. And yeah, if you're home for the holidays, go stream Standard Time live in New York.
For sure, for sure. Thank you so much.